The morning began like any other, with the sun creeping through the curtains and birds singing outside the windows, but for the children, today was going to be far from ordinary. They were just finishing their breakfast, laughing and chatting about small things, what they would do after school, who would play which video game, and what snack they wanted, when their mother suddenly walked into the room with a serious look on her face. Her eyes were hard, and her tone was cold, a sharp contrast to the warmth that usually filled their home. "Pack your things," she said, her voice trembling slightly. "You're leaving the house today." The words hit them like a thunderbolt, and for a moment, the children stared at her in disbelief, thinking it must be some kind of joke, but the fear in her eyes told them it was not. Their hearts began to race, confusion swirling through their minds as they tried to understand what was happening. They had never seen their mother like this before. She was usually caring, always concerned about their schoolwork, their meals, and their happiness, but today, she seemed distant, almost like a stranger. Her hands shook as she handed them a list of things they could take, and her voice broke slightly when she explained that the house would no longer be theirs. The older child tried to reason with her. "Mom, why? What did we do?" But there was no answer, only silence and the sound of papers rustling. Their mother's eyes filled with tears, but she remained firm, repeating that they had to leave immediately. The younger ones clung to their sibling, frightened, unsure where they would go or what they would do. As they started packing, the atmosphere was heavy with sadness. The children moved slowly, gathering their belongings while sneaking glances at their mother, hoping for some hint of kindness or an explanation that could make sense of this sudden decision. They packed their clothes, favorite toys, schoolbooks, and little treasures they had collected over the years. Each item seemed to hold a memory, a piece of the life they were being forced to leave behind. Neighbors began to notice the commotion, looking curiously from their windows, but no one dared to ask questions. Sensing the tension in the air, the children's friends called on the phone, asking why they were not coming out to play, but the children could only whisper that something serious was happening at home. Their mother avoided their calls, speaking only when necessary, and even then, her words were cold and distant. The children's minds raced with questions, their hearts heavy with fear. They wondered if this was a punishment for something they had done, or if their mother was angry with them, or maybe, they thought silently, there was something wrong with the house itself, something they did not know about, but nothing made sense, and each passing minute seemed to stretch longer than the last. The front door, which had always been a symbol of safety and comfort, now felt like a barrier to an uncertain future. As they carried their small suitcases down the stairs, the sound of their footsteps echoed through the empty hall, and with each step, the reality sank in. They were being forced out of their home, the only place they had ever known as safe and familiar. Even their pet, a small puppy that always greeted them with excitement, seemed confused, whining softly and following them nervously. The children's hearts ached, not just for themselves, but for the sudden absence of warmth and love in a place that had always felt like home. They looked at their mother one last time, hoping for a smile or a comforting word, but she only nodded silently, signaling that it was time to leave. As they stepped outside, the cool morning air hit them, a sharp contrast to the warmth they had felt inside the house. They felt exposed, small, and uncertain. Walking down the street, they clutched their belongings tightly, each of them trying to stay strong for the others, but inside, fear and sadness swirled like a storm, making it difficult to breathe. The children did not know where they were going, who would help them, or what awaited them beyond their familiar neighborhood. Their minds raced with thoughts of what could happen next. But despite the fear, there was a flicker of hope, a tiny spark that told them they would find a way, that someone out there might help them, and that maybe, just maybe, things could get better. Little did they know, this sudden eviction was just the beginning of a journey that would change their lives forever, a journey filled with surprises, challenges, and unexpected encounters that would test their courage, their bond as siblings, and their ability to trust again. Today, they had lost their home, but they were about to discover that life had a strange way of turning even the darkest moments into lessons of resilience and hope. After leaving their home, the children wandered down the quiet street, their small hands clutching their belongings tightly. Each step felt heavier than the last, as if the weight of the world had suddenly landed on their shoulders. They glanced at each other, searching for comfort, but all they saw in their siblings' eyes was the same fear and confusion that mirrored their own. They couldn't understand why this had happened. Their mother, who had always been their protector, The one who kissed their scraped knees and stayed up late when they were sick, had suddenly become someone they couldn't recognize, someone whose words were sharp and whose heart seemed unreachable. They kept replaying the morning in their minds, trying to find a clue, a reason, anything that could explain why they were being forced out. "Did we do something wrong?" whispered the youngest, her small voice trembling. Her brother shook his head, though even he didn't really know the answer. I don't know," he admitted. "I thought we were good kids. We didn't fight, we did our homework," but his voice cracked before he could finish. As they walked, the neighborhood seemed strangely different, almost mocking them with its ordinary calm. The houses, the trees, even the chirping birds felt like reminders of a life they had lost. The children had lived here for years, every corner familiar, every neighbor a silent witness to their joys and small adventures, and now, everything felt like it belonged to someone else, like they had been erased from the world they knew. Their stomachs ached, not from hunger, but from worry and uncertainty. What would they do next? Where would they sleep tonight? What would happen if no one helped them? The questions multiplied in their minds, each one louder and more frightening than the last, and yet, they continued walking, step by hesitant step, because standing still seemed even scarier. At one point, they stopped near the old park at the end of the street, a place they had always loved. The swings creaked in the wind, the slides glimmered under the sunlight, and for a moment, they felt a pang of nostalgia mixed with sorrow. Memories of laughter, birthday parties, and playful arguments flooded their minds, and the pain of leaving it all behind tightened in their chests. The older sibling tried to be brave, holding the younger ones close, whispering that everything would be okay, even though he wasn't sure himself. We just need to find someone to help us," he said, trying to sound confident. "Maybe Uncle Raj, or Mr. Kapoor, someone will listen," but the words sounded fragile, almost like a hope stretched too thin. As they kept moving, a small crowd of neighbors watched silently, some with pity, some with curiosity, but none stepped forward. The children felt invisible yet exposed, trapped in a confusing world where adults either ignored their pain or didn't know how to fix it. Their fear grew not just from losing their home, but from realizing how small and powerless they really were. They tried to talk to each other, to make sense of it, but every suggestion seemed impossible. "Maybe Mom will let us come back tomorrow," suggested the middle child, clinging to a dream that had no foundation. "No. I think she's serious," replied the eldest, his voice low. "She wouldn't just say it like that. She sounded angry, scared. I don't know." The afternoon sun climbed higher, casting long shadows that seemed to follow them wherever they went. The children's energy began to fade, their movements slower, their minds heavier. Every sound, the barking of a dog, the ringing of a bicycle bell, the distant laughter of other kids, reminded them of the normal life they had lost, and the normal life they were struggling to reach. By evening, exhaustion took over, but sleep felt impossible. The children huddled together under a tree in the park, trying to create a small sense of safety in an unsafe world. They whispered their fears to each other, tiny secrets that would not leave their lips outside their little circle. Questions about tomorrow, about their mother, about their future, tumbled into the night sky like shooting stars, unanswered and unreachable. And yet, in the midst of fear, a small flicker of hope began to grow. A thought, quiet and fragile, whispered among them. Someone kind, someone powerful, someone who cared might listen to their story, someone who could understand their pain and help them find a place to feel safe again. For the first time since the morning, the children felt a tiny spark that maybe, just maybe, things could get better. Little did they know, this spark of hope would soon lead them to someone unexpected, someone whose life was very different from theirs but whose heart had space for their story, someone who could see the truth, the courage, and the resilience in these frightened children, someone who would become the first step in their journey out of fear and into understanding. The children stayed under the park's old oak tree for a while, holding each other tightly as the evening breeze brushed against their faces, but fear was no longer the only thing filling their hearts. Uncertainty mixed with a growing determination. They knew they couldn't stay here forever. They needed help, someone who could listen, someone who could understand. The eldest sibling, carrying the responsibility for his younger siblings, finally spoke, his voice quiet but steady. "We have to find someone who can help us, maybe Uncle Raj, or Mr. Kapoor, someone who won't turn us away." His eyes searched the dimming streets, hoping for a familiar face, a kind smile, anything that could guide them through this chaos. The younger ones nodded, their small hands clutching his arms as if holding on to courage itself. They had no plan, no map, only a fragile hope that someone in the world would care enough to help them. They walked slowly, their footsteps silent on the cracked pavement, each one echoing the uncertainty in their hearts. As they moved through the familiar neighborhood, the children hesitated outside the houses they had once visited often, hoping someone might notice their fear, someone might open a door and offer warmth, food, or at least an understanding word. But the world seemed indifferent that evening. Windows were shut, doors locked, and only the occasional glow of a television reminded them that life went on, unaware of their struggle. After what felt like hours, they reached a familiar gate, one that belonged to a wealthy family who had always treated them kindly. The children remembered the man who lived there, a millionaire known not just for his wealth but for his generous heart. He had smiled at them on holidays, sometimes even given them small gifts, always asking about school and their dreams, and now, in their darkest hour, they clung to the memory of that kindness. They rang the bell nervously, their fingers trembling as if they might slip. The sound echoed through the quiet house, and for a moment, they feared no one would answer. But then the door opened, and there he was, the millionaire, tall and calm, his face a mixture of surprise and concern. His eyes softened when he saw the children, and without a word, he stepped aside, signaling them to enter. Inside, the warmth of the house was overwhelming, the scent of fresh bread and coffee filling the air. The children sat on the plush couch, their hearts still racing but a little lighter now. He knelt down to their level, his voice gentle. "What happened, children? Why are you here like this?" He listened patiently as they began to explain, their words tumbling out in a mixture of fear, sadness, and confusion. They spoke of the sudden eviction, of their mother's cold words, of the uncertainty that had haunted them all day. They described the walk through the streets, the park, and the loneliness that had pressed against their chests. They spoke of their belongings packed in haste, their fears of the night, and their desperate search for someone who could understand. The millionaire's expression remained calm but attentive, his eyes never leaving theirs. He asked gentle questions, helping them organize the story in their minds, and slowly, the children began to feel that someone actually understood, someone actually cared. For the first time that day, tears flowed freely, not just of sadness, but also of relief, as the children realized they were not alone in this world. He offered them something they had not dared to hope for, a safe place to stay for the night, food to eat, and a promise to help them figure out what to do next. The children felt their hearts lighten, a warmth spreading through their chests, and a tiny spark of hope began to grow. Maybe, just maybe, things could get better. Maybe someone could help them understand their mother's actions. Maybe life wasn't as dark as it had seemed that morning. As they settled in, the millionaire made them promise to rest, to regain their strength, and not to be afraid. He told them that sometimes, adults make choices that are hard to understand, but that there is always a way to find clarity and support. The children nodded silently, feeling safe for the first time since they had left home, and for the first time, they realized that help could come from unexpected places. And so, in the quiet comfort of a stranger's home turned safe haven, the children began to regain a sense of hope. Their journey to understanding, healing, and uncovering the surprising truth about their mother's actions was just beginning, and they knew, deep inside, that with the right guidance and courage, they could face whatever came next, together, as siblings, as survivors, and as children ready to reclaim their future. The millionaire sat quietly for a moment, his hands folded on the table. As he listened to the children pour out their story, each word struck him like a wave, not just the shock of what had happened, but the courage it took for these small, trembling voices to explain the unimaginable. His heart ached as he realized how alone they must have felt, wandering the streets after being kicked out, unsure of where to go or who to trust. He leaned back slightly, his eyes narrowing, not in anger, but in thought, trying to understand the deeper story behind their mother's actions. There was something more here, something hidden, and he could feel it in the way the children hesitated, the way their eyes flickered with fear even as they spoke. He knew that the surface story, of eviction and heartbreak, was only the beginning. "Children," he said finally, his voice calm but firm, "I need to know everything. Don't leave out a single detail, no matter how small it seems." His gaze softened, letting them know he was on their side. Yet his tone carried authority, a quiet strength that made them feel safe, but also that someone was taking their situation seriously. The eldest child swallowed nervously, feeling the weight of responsibility. It all started this morning. Mom said we had to leave. She wouldn't explain why. She just said it was urgent and that we couldn't stay. He paused, glancing at his younger siblings who were sitting close together, their faces pale and worried. We tried asking her. We didn't understand. And then she just told us to pack our things. The millionaire listened carefully, his mind already working, piecing together fragments of information, noticing the inconsistencies in their story, the hesitation, and the fear that seemed to grow with each sentence. He asked gentle, probing questions. Did she say anything about money? About a problem with the house? Anything unusual that might have made her act this way? The children shook their heads. No, nothing like that. She just said it was something important. Something we wouldn't understand. The middle child whispered, her voice barely audible. We didn't know what to do, so we came here, hoping, maybe you could help us. At that moment, the millionaire felt a surge of determination. He realized that these children weren't just lost, they were in danger of being hurt emotionally, perhaps even more than they had already been. He could see their trust in him, fragile as it was, and he knew he had to be careful, but decisive. Every action mattered. Don't worry, he said finally, placing a reassuring hand on the eldest child's shoulder. I'm going to help you, but first, we need to figure out what really happened, why your mother did this, and how we can keep you safe until we understand the full story. His tone was steady, reassuring, but carried the weight of someone who had faced challenges before and knew how to handle them. He stood up and began pacing slowly, thinking aloud. Sometimes, adults make decisions that seem harsh or unfair, decisions that hurt those they love, but that doesn't mean they don't care. It doesn't mean the situation is hopeless. There is always a reason, and we will find it together. The children listened, captivated by his calm confidence, a feeling they hadn't experienced all day. They had felt fear, confusion, and despair, but now, there was a glimmer of hope, a sense that someone was taking their story seriously, that someone powerful could protect them, and maybe even help them understand their mother's actions. He sat back down, leaning closer. For now, you are safe here. Eat, rest, and don't worry about a thing, he said, his eyes scanning their faces to make sure they were listening. Tomorrow, we start figuring out what happened, and I promise, no matter what the reason is, we will face it together. As he spoke, the millionaire felt a quiet admiration for these children, small yet brave, frightened yet resilient. They had come to a stranger for help, trusting someone they barely knew, and in doing so, they had shown a strength that not many adults could claim. He knew this wasn't just about helping them find a roof over their heads. It was about helping them navigate a world that had suddenly become frightening and incomprehensible. For the rest of the evening, he offered comfort in simple ways: warm food, a cozy place to sit, and soft words that made the children feel safe. For the first time that day, their eyes slowly lost some of the fear, replaced by curiosity and cautious hope. As they drifted toward sleep, he made silent promises to himself. He would find the truth, uncover the reason behind their mother's shocking actions, and make sure these children were protected, no matter what it took. And in that quiet house, under the soft glow of evening lights, the first step toward understanding, healing, and revelation had begun. The next morning, the children woke in a soft, warm room, a place so different from the cold, empty streets they had wandered the day before. They stretched and yawned, glancing at one another, still uncertain if this was a dream or reality. But as the smell of breakfast filled the air, they realized they were safe, at least for now, and that the millionaire had kept his promise. After a quiet meal, the millionaire called the children together, his expression serious but gentle. Yesterday, I heard your story, and it broke my heart, but before we decide what to do next, I need you to tell me everything that happened at home, no matter how small or embarrassing it might seem. His eyes held a calm intensity, encouraging them to speak freely. The eldest child took a deep breath, feeling the weight of responsibility again. It's not just what happened this morning. There have been strange things for weeks, he said, his voice trembling slightly. Mom seemed worried, distracted, sometimes angry for no reason. She stopped laughing like she used to, and she argued with us over tiny things that didn't matter before. The middle child added, she started hiding letters, and sometimes she whispered on the phone late at night. We didn't know what she was saying, we just felt Scared, the youngest clutched a small stuffed toy tightly, eyes wide. I tried asking her why, but she said it was grown-up business, and that we shouldn't worry. The millionaire listened carefully, nodding, asking questions when needed, helping the children put pieces together like a puzzle. The more they spoke, the more the truth began to emerge, not the whole truth, but enough to hint at a secret bigger than anything they had imagined. He paused, leaning forward, his voice calm but firm. Did anyone else know about these problems at home? Friends? Family? The eldest shook his head. No, we tried to talk to Uncle Raj, but Mom said we shouldn't. She said no one would understand, and that it was better if we just listened and obeyed. The millionaire's eyes narrowed slightly, a mix of concern and curiosity crossing his face. It sounds like your mother was carrying something heavy, something she didn't know how to share. Did she ever say why she had to send you away? The children shook their heads, but a small trembling voice from the youngest whispered, I think it's because of money, or maybe something she wanted to protect us from, but I don't know what. It's a secret. Her words hung in the air, fragile, yet full of meaning. The millionaire leaned back, thinking carefully. Secrets can be dangerous, especially when children are involved. But sometimes, parents hide things because they love their children and want to protect them. His voice softened. I want to help you understand, but first, we need to uncover the whole truth, every hidden piece, every reason, every fear your mother had. The eldest child hesitated, then admitted, there's something else. Sometimes, Mom would cry alone. Sometimes she'd sit in her room late at night, staring at papers, and then lock the door. I tried to peek, but she wouldn't let me in. The middle child nodded, and I found a letter once. It was about a lot of money, something about debts, but I didn't read it. I didn't want to upset her. The millionaire's expression remained calm, but a spark of understanding flashed in his eyes. He realized this was bigger than just a family argument, bigger than a bad day, bigger than a fight over chores or school. This was a secret that had weighed heavily on the mother, something she had tried to carry alone, something that had pushed her to make the hardest decision of her life. He reached out, gently placing a hand on the eldest child's shoulder. You've been very brave, telling me all of this, and I promise you, we will find the answers, and you will understand why your mother acted the way she did. His words offered a lifeline of hope, a promise that even the darkest mysteries could be solved with patience, courage, and care. The children, though still scared, felt a tiny spark of relief. Finally, someone was listening, someone was taking them seriously, someone would help them understand the truth. And as they sat together in that quiet, warm room, a sense of anticipation grew, the unveiling of secrets, the discovery of hidden truths, and the reason for their sudden eviction was close, closer than ever before. Little did they know, the revelation awaiting them would be more surprising than anything they had imagined, something that would challenge their understanding of love, sacrifice, and family. And though fear still lingered in the back of their minds, a new feeling was growing stronger, hope that the truth would finally set them free. The morning sun filtered softly through the curtains, casting a warm glow over the children as they sat together, waiting anxiously for the millionaire to speak. Their hearts beat fast, a mixture of fear and hope swirling inside them. Today was the day they would finally uncover the reason behind their mother's shocking decision, the reason she had kicked them out of their home. The millionaire sat across from them, calm and patient, his eyes kind but filled with intensity. Children, he said gently, I think it's time you learned the truth. The reason your mother asked you to leave. The children leaned forward, their small hands gripping each other, their eyes wide with anticipation and fear. He took a deep breath, then continued, your mother didn't send you away out of anger. She didn't want to hurt you. She did it because she wanted to protect you from something very serious. The eldest child's mouth went dry, the middle child's eyes grew wider, and the youngest clutched her stuffed toy tighter. Protect us. From what? The eldest finally whispered, his voice trembling. The millionaire paused for effect, letting the weight of his words settle in. Your mother has been dealing with a dangerous situation, a threat she couldn't share with you because she didn't want you to worry. She discovered that a financial scam had targeted your family, a group of people who could have caused serious harm if they found you at home. She had to act quickly, make decisions no child could understand, and ensure your safety above all else. The children stared at him, disbelief and shock written across their faces. You mean, she sent us away so we wouldn't be in danger? the middle child asked, her voice barely audible. The millionaire nodded. Exactly, she knew that keeping you in the house could put you at risk. She made the hardest decision of her life, knowing it would hurt you, but believing it was the only way to keep you safe. His eyes softened as he continued, she didn't tell you because she didn't want you to live in fear. She trusted that someone else could watch over you temporarily, and that's why you came here. The eldest child swallowed hard, emotions flooding his chest. We thought she didn't love us, that she was angry, or that we had done something wrong. The millionaire shook his head gently. No, children, it was love that had to hide behind tough choices. Sometimes parents have to make decisions that seem cruel but are meant to protect those they love the most. Tears welled up in the children's eyes as the truth began to sink in. They had felt abandoned, hurt, and confused, but now they realized their mother's actions were a form of protection, a sacrifice that had cost her deeply. She risked so much to keep us safe, the youngest whispered, barely audible. The millionaire nodded. Yes, she risked your trust, your feelings, even the bond you thought you shared, all to protect you from something you didn't even know existed. It was not an easy choice. No parent would ever take such a step lightly. The children held their breath, imagining their mother alone, making the decision to send them away, heartbroken but determined. A silence fell over the room, heavy but filled with understanding. The children finally realized that love didn't always come wrapped in warmth and smiles. Sometimes it came hidden in sacrifice, in actions that were hard to accept, but powerful in their purpose. We need to see her, the eldest said finally, determination in his voice. We need to understand everything ourselves, face her, and tell her we forgive her. The millionaire smiled softly, proud of their courage. Yes, but we will do it carefully. First, you rest, regain your strength, and then we plan how to approach her safely, so you can understand the truth and she can explain everything fully. For the first time since the morning of the eviction, the children felt relief, hope, and even a strange sense of admiration for their mother. The twist, the shocking truth, had turned their fear into understanding, their anger into empathy, and their confusion into a determination to reconnect and heal. And as they sat together, holding hands, hearts still racing but filled with hope, they realized that the journey wasn't over, but now it had a purpose, uncovering the full story, restoring their bond with their mother, and facing life's unexpected challenges with courage and love. This revelation marked a turning point in their lives, a shocking twist that no one had expected, but one that would forever change how they saw family, trust, and the meaning of sacrifice. And deep inside, the children knew that with this truth, they could face the future together, stronger and braver than ever before. After the shocking revelation, the children sat quietly in the warm living room, the weight of the truth slowly sinking in. Their hearts, which had been heavy with fear and confusion, now felt a strange mixture of relief, sadness, and even admiration. They were beginning to understand that their mother's actions, though painful, had been born out of love, sacrifice, and a desire to protect them. The eldest sibling, who had felt so much responsibility that day, took a deep breath, trying to process everything. So, she didn't abandon us, she was trying to keep us safe, he whispered, his voice shaky but filled with wonder. The middle child nodded slowly, tears sliding down her cheeks. All this time, I thought she didn't care. I didn't understand, but now, it makes sense. She was scared too. Even the youngest, who had cried quietly all day, began to see things differently. I think she loves us so much that she made the hardest choice ever, she murmured, hugging her stuffed toy tightly, but this time with a small smile. Her words were simple, but they carried the weight of understanding, a tiny spark of forgiveness forming in her heart. The millionaire watched them quietly, letting them reflect, knowing that this moment of comprehension was just as important as the revelation itself. Sometimes, he said gently, we only understand the decisions of those we love after seeing the bigger picture. It's natural to feel hurt at first, but what matters is that you now know why she acted the way she did. The children thought about the past weeks, the arguments, the tension at home, the whispered phone calls, and the cold mornings when their mother had seemed distant. At the time, all of it had felt confusing and unfair, but now, with the secret unveiled, every tear, every harsh word, every hurried gesture suddenly had meaning. They realized their mother had carried an invisible burden, one she had never wanted them to feel, and yet she had suffered silently, just to keep them safe. They began talking quietly among themselves, sharing their feelings for the first time. "I feel proud of her," said the eldest, a small smile breaking through. "Even though it hurt, she thought about us first, even more than herself." The middle child nodded. "Yeah, she risked so much for us. I wish I could tell her I understand now." The youngest simply hugged both of them, a quiet understanding in her eyes that went beyond words. As the afternoon passed, the children began to imagine their mother alone at home, making impossible choices, crying in private, worrying about what could happen to them. It was a new perspective, one that made their anger fade, replaced with empathy, admiration, and a deep desire to reconnect. Their fear turned into hope, their confusion into clarity, and their sadness into a quiet resolve to heal the bond that had seemed broken. The millionaire encouraged them to express their feelings, asking gentle questions, guiding them to understand that forgiveness wasn't just for their mother, it was also for themselves, to release the fear and hurt they had carried for so long. Slowly, the children began to see that understanding didn't erase the pain entirely, but it gave them the tools to process it, to find peace, and to prepare for the next step in their journey. By evening, they were ready to think about the future, about how to approach their mother and rebuild trust. The eldest whispered, "Tomorrow, we go back, we talk, we listen, and maybe, we can be together again." The middle child nodded, "Yes, and we can tell her we forgive her, and that we understand." Even the youngest smiled, a small, hopeful grin, feeling the weight of fear lift slightly from her tiny shoulders. In that quiet, warm room, surrounded by kindness, safety, and understanding, the children realized something powerful. Love isn't always easy to understand, sometimes it's hidden in sacrifice, and sometimes it asks for courage to see the bigger picture. They had begun to see the world not just through their own eyes, but through the eyes of someone who loved them deeply, someone who had made impossible choices to protect them. And as night fell, the children lay together, hearts lighter, minds calmer, and spirits stronger. They had faced fear, confusion, and heartbreak, and had come through it with understanding, empathy, and hope. They were ready now, not just to reunite with their mother, but to face life's challenges with courage, knowing that even in the darkest moments, love could guide them, heal them, and show them the way. The next morning, the children woke with a quiet determination in their hearts. Their minds were clearer now, no longer clouded by fear or confusion. They had spent the previous day processing the truth, understanding their mother's sacrifice, and reflecting on the love that had guided her actions, and now they were ready to take the next step, to reunite and face the future together. The millionaire noticed the change immediately, his eyes softening with pride. "You've grown stronger overnight," he said, smiling gently. "It's not easy to understand difficult choices, but you've done it. Today, we reach out to your mother, not with anger, but with love and understanding." The children nodded, feeling a mixture of excitement and nervousness, their hands clasped together tightly, a silent promise that they would face this moment as one. He led them carefully through the streets, giving them encouragement and reminding them to stay calm. The house that had once felt cold and frightening now appeared familiar, but their hearts still raced with anticipation. "Are we really going to see her?" whispered the youngest, her voice trembling, but her eyes filled with hope. When the front door opened, their mother appeared, her face pale, her eyes wide with surprise, and then quickly filled with tears. She looked at her children standing there, holding each other's hands, and for a moment, words failed her. She had expected fear, anger, or resentment, but instead, she saw understanding, courage, and love reflected in their eyes. The eldest child stepped forward first, his voice steady. "Mom, we understand now, we know why you sent us away, we know you were trying to protect us." His words were simple, yet they carried the weight of forgiveness and empathy. The middle child added softly, "We're not angry anymore, we know it was for our safety, and we forgive you." The youngest wrapped her arms around her mother's waist, whispering, "We love you, and we're okay now." Their mother's tears fell freely as she embraced them, holding each child tightly, feeling the relief, the love, and the forgiveness that she had feared she might never receive. "I am so proud of you, so brave, and I am so sorry," she whispered, her voice breaking. "I only wanted to keep you safe. I never wanted to hurt you." The millionaire watched quietly from the side, his heart full, knowing that this reunion was the turning point the children had been waiting for. It was not just a return to the home, but a return to trust, love, and understanding. He knew that the fear and uncertainty they had endured would leave a mark, but now it was accompanied by resilience, empathy, and a deeper bond than ever before. The children spent the day sharing stories, laughter, and even tears with their mother, discovering sides of her they had never truly seen, the strength, the worry, and the love that had driven her actions. They talked openly, for the first time in weeks, about fears, worries, and hopes. Each conversation built bridges that had been shaken, bringing warmth and closeness back to their home. As evening fell, the house was filled with a quiet sense of peace, the kind that comes after storms have passed. The children realized that life might still hold challenges, but they had discovered something more powerful than fear or uncertainty: trust, love, and the courage to face even the most difficult truths. The millionaire stood by the doorway, smiling at the sight, knowing that sometimes, helping wasn't just about offering safety or guidance, it was about guiding hearts toward understanding, compassion, and hope. The children had learned that even when life seemed unfair, love could transform pain into strength, and sacrifice into a lesson of courage. Before leaving, he knelt down and spoke to the eldest child. "Remember, life will always have challenges, but the love and courage you've shown will guide you through anything. And you've seen that sometimes, the hardest decisions are made out of love." The children nodded, understanding that the journey they had been through was only the beginning of a stronger, wiser, and more compassionate life. That night, as the family sat together, sharing a simple meal, the home felt warmer than ever. The house that had once been a place of fear now became a place of safety, laughter, and love. The children understood that while challenges were inevitable, love, understanding, and hope could guide them through the darkest moments, and that even the hardest choices made by those who loved them were never meaningless. And as they drifted to sleep that night, hearts full, minds at peace, they knew that life had given them a second chance, not just to return home, but to embrace it with courage, gratitude, and a deep understanding of what it truly meant to love and forgive.